now on to Lydia.
The reality is that parents, educators, speech pathologists, or anyone for that matter, really has no idea what it's like not to speak, and the frustrations that go along with the inability to communicate efficiently. Others can experience how it feels to use an AAC device for a day, but there's always the ability to speak and express yourself efficiently if you get frustrated or sick of using the AAC device. You can go back to your verbal communication. However, when an AAC user gets frustrated or exhausted from using their device, there is no easy way out to get their point across. AAC users have to be creative and think of ways to communicate efficiently in order for people to actually engage in communicating with them. Laura, honestly, I wished my therapist and educators would have an understanding of having to depend on using an AAC device when they gave me advice. But I knew they couldn't understand. I had always wanted to be a speech language pathologist because I knew I would understand my clients with what they might be going through. Unfortunately, I'm not a licensed SLP. That's why I want to consult with SLPs and educators, because I want to help bring a new perspective of someone who is like their clients and help them close the gap. When I was in kindergarten, my school created a support team for me. My support group was made up of current teachers for the year, teachers for the next school year, all three of my therapists, occupational, speech and physical therapist, my personal aide, the special education coordinator, the Keystone IT person, and the district IT person, the principal and a parent support representative from the state, my parents and myself. My parents requested that I attend all my IEP meetings and any meetings that involved my AAC device. My parents felt that I needed to have a say in these things, and I am so lucky they felt that way, so I could help direct my education and my communication. AAC users need to be in their IEP meetings because they are the experts of themselves. Parents and teachers can't be with them all day long. They know what is working and not working. AAC users might have ideas to try because they know it will work. Not going to lie, my team learned early on that I was the lead decision maker for which AAC device I was getting, and I was pretty clear of what I didn't like or what I thought. This might have been wanting to pull their hair out because I'd tell them the access method they chose wouldn't work or the new system that they picked wasn't a good fit for me. The reality was me and only I was going to be using the device day in and day out. This is why we as educators need to listen to AAC users and let them choose the device because they know what their body can or can't do. And I tease their voice. We as educators need to show them everything, not just our favorite systems or what we think they will be successful at. Honestly, they might come up with ideas that you would never come up with that makes it work and easier. I wouldn't have been able to create my own stylus and have it be available for people with disabilities to use soon. I created it because since I have cerebral palsy, it is hard to use the other styluses because they are too thin and I press down so hard that I rub the rubber ends off. I designed the nab pen so it is more thicker to hang on to, and your hand doesn't slide down. I also designed the napkin that it has a bigger end on it, that it is more secure, and it is easier to press down to select. The napkin has a wrist strap on it, so the user doesn't have to worry about dropping it and picking it back up. I have been working with an engineer on the progress of getting napkin manufactured. This is the official prototype that I'm using. I have a lot of people that tell me that I need a mount for my iPad. I always tell them, no thank you. My parents and I rambled a Velcro strap that attaches to both sides of my wheelchair, and it works. I can transfer myself to my wheelchair and out. A mount would limit my ability to do that. And I like to be independent as much as I can. I know that I drove my educators and drive my friends who are therapists crazy because I keep telling them no. But sometimes I wish people could see my view. I think other people with disabilities feel this way too, because a lot of times we get told what equipment that we need, and it might help us for one thing, but it's not always practical for everything. People with disabilities know their body better than anyone, so why not ask them about what they need first? Even though I had a device, I always still used other forms of communication as well. For example, I used my paper communication board. For people that know me well, like my family, my school aide, some teachers and friends, I will talk and spell out words with my hands. I tried sign language when I was 3 years old. Due to my cerebral palsy, I couldn't do the traditional signs. So I developed my own that I could physically do, and my family and my personal aide learned to understand them. Also, we need to accept all kinds of communication, not just AAC, because then they would be motivated to use words or symbols to communicate. When my clients verbalize or gesture that they want to do something or need a break, I don't ask them to say it again with their device because all communication modes are acceptable. If I didn't understand what they meant, then they will verbalize it again or use their communication device. Educators and therapists should respect whatever mode the AAC user decides their mode of communication, because in my IEP meetings, I would talk verbally and my mom or my dad would interrupt what I was saying. I always felt like my therapists and my educators wanted me to use my devices because they thought my parents said what they wanted me to say, which wasn't true at all. The reality was I had a full day of school where I used my device and did my schoolwork. Before that, I was tired using my AAC device. Honestly, it's mentally exhausting and physically exhausting, as AAC users need to think about what they want to say, position themselves, use their device, and save their energy for other things. AAC users need to have a break so they can rejuvenate their energy to use their device. One of my biggest pet peeves with AAC devices is the programming. Therapists, teachers, and parents trying to predict what the AAC user is wanting to say. No one should predict someone else's responses or thoughts. To me, the programmed AAC devices limited my language to what someone else thought I was capable of communicating. Luckily for me, my parents, teachers, and therapists felt the same way. So when I was still in preschool, my support group formed to start looking at devices for me. My team decided I needed an assistive communication aid. someone that could coordinate all my homework sheets and books that needed to be scanned onto my device and make sure it was completed in a timely manner for me to participate in class. So I had my personal aide that was with me all day, and now I had an assistive communication aide. I think it is very important for a kid to have the same aide year after year. They develop a relationship that really makes them seem as one unit. I had the same aide from first grade until I graduated. She was like my second mom. Now, my assistive communication aide was a different story. She wanted to be in charge of my device and didn't want me to make any changes or additions to any of my boards. So my parents requested in my IEP meeting that I be in charge of my device and decide what is to be deleted off my device and be allowed to be trained to program my device myself. So it was set up how I wanted it, and the assistive communication aid was only to scan into the device what the teachers give to her. So from that point on, I was in charge of what was put on my device.
Yeah. Thanks, Lydia. And I think that that really lends itself nicely to building those teams. You had a strong team of people, your parents, who you trusted, who maybe felt safe or had that status that they felt like they could advocate for you. And you advocated for yourself a lot. I think that that's so important. So we have a few resources for coaching. These were some of the ones that that I talked about in the presentation, some that I really enjoy. And we also have a slide of people who use AAC to follow. So Lydia talked a lot about how it's important for people to consult with somebody who uses an AAC device, who truly understands all of the pieces that go into making that successful and what it should be like. And Lydia consults and works with a lot of, works sort of as a mentor, right, Lydia? Would that be an accurate description to other individuals who use AAC? And a lot of her presentations and a lot of what you'll see on her website and social media is really, she advocates a lot for making sure that we are consulting with somebody who uses AAC and can help guide us in that journey as well. So I wanted to make sure that we included a few places where you can start to learn more from people who use AAC themselves. Lydia is a great person. She hosts a lot of trainings. I think she has one going on this week where she's interviewing and talking with other AAC users. And Mike Hipple has the Wisconsin AAC network, and he talks and presents a lot. I know he presented at the Self-Determination Conference this week in Wisconsin. PRC Satilla has their ambassadors or people who use AAC. And then a great conference that's free and it's held every year in June is AAC in the Cloud. And they almost always have a strand where you are going to be able to connect and hear from people who use AAC as well as caregivers, so family members, and hear their opinions. And then something that just came out, Jordan Zimmerman is a young woman who uses AAC as well. She uses Proloquo to go, and Assistaware, the company that makes Proloquo to go, I think, helped to make a film about her life. And you can rent it. I believe it's $9.99. And it's called This Is Not About Me. And it's about her journey in school. She had significant behaviors and did not have a communication system until she turned 18. And so you'll hear from some of the individuals that worked with her, an advocate who helped her family, her mom, and you'll hear from Jordan. And it's a really, really powerful film that I'd highly recommend. But I think it's really important to start to hear and learn more about that perspective.
We're a small enough group that, please, unmute yourself And chat, I know that, some people may have some questions about, in this case, Lydia, you are a very, very intelligent young woman using AAC. What do we do as instructors and classroom teachers when we have students who are not, or we're not sure where their cognition may be?
Yeah.
Now is your time to ask Lydia all the questions because she's amazing.
The best advice I have is do not limit anyone. Different situations sometimes require different types of communication access. Also, never give up on an idea. Just because it doesn't work today doesn't mean it won't work tomorrow or in 10 years. Remember how I said I had to use a pointer attached to a hand splint when I was younger? Well, did you notice how I can hold on to a stylus now? I developed more strength and control, so now I can actually use the access method I tried and struggled with before. Keep reintroducing things because you never know.
Thank you for that. And I think that is so true. When I was an AT specialist in our school district, getting kids early and young, and people were like, you really want to start with them? They just turned 3. And I'm like, yes, I've already lost 3 years. Let's get started.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I think sort of the counter argument, sometimes I think I always worked with the high school population, and I would find sometimes I had some great therapists that worked in the school that I did under me. They had just as good AAC skills as I did. And for whatever reason, that student wasn't able to use an augmentative communication device, maybe a high-tech system. And they'd get up to me in the high school and suddenly they'd start using it and it would make me look amazing. But I don't think it had anything to do with me. I think for whatever reason in their own development, they were ready. And so if we don't keep trying, just because something's been done in the past doesn't mean that we can't circle back to it and try it again. Again, coming back to those kindergartners building the spaghetti towers, they would try, it would fall down, they'd try again. We need to just continue to try things with fidelity. We can't just try one thing and say, no, it didn't work that day, like Lydia said, but keep trying and keep trying to build those skills to develop that communication.
Well, and think about the fact that you always think that kids are competent, that kids have intelligence, that there is more in there. Just because as AT people, we can't figure out a way to maybe access that at that moment, doesn't mean that they're not understanding us, and, like you said, it could be the behavior, there could be lots of things, but behavior is communication. You just have to figure out ways around that,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Has anyone encountered a challenging team that they would like to talk about and brainstorm ideas for how to help build success? I know I'm not the only one that deals with challenging teams.
Well, people are thinking about that. Lydia, I have a question for you. When you were younger and, maybe reading was difficult and things like that, what did you find was important, or what was the most important aspect of you learning to communicate? Was it that people presented things like in pictures and in verbal format or in text? What was going on that made it easier for you to learn?
I started preschool when I was 3, and my teacher taught me to read, and what really helped me was listening to someone else read, not those boring audio books, because I needed to hear and to see how everything was pronounced.
Thank you for that. That really is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have a question? Nicole, I saw you unmuted.
Hi. No, I was just going to say, when we were talking back about challenges, I think kind of what you guys said in your presentation, one of the challenges we've had is just really getting started and knowing where to start. And so I really liked how you were talking about just trying something. But I think that's been something we've kind of been working through so far this year. So if you have any other advice or anything.
Yeah, and I think, again, you want to meet with that team and you want everybody's voice to be heard. I think really listening to parents, I learned so much during virtual learning when we did so much teletherapy, and we were so reliant on parents to give us all of that information on what was happening in the home. And they are such good sources of information. And I think working in the schools, we don't rely on them enough. We're sort of in our own little school world and what's going to work here at school. But inviting them to the table and letting them have a voice for, what do you think? You know them best. And, you know, if there's a paraprofessional or, you know, a teacher, it could be, I mean, even bringing the regular ed teacher into the conversation, maybe they're able to communicate with that student in gym class really, really well. And you might not see that in the classroom, but if you wouldn't have had that opinion, and if you wouldn't have heard from that teacher and invited them to the table to have those conversations, you would miss out on what that might look like. So I think it's really important to sort of set the groundwork for, I'm not an expert, you know, I am, but I mean, I'm not the only one that has all the answers, and I need all of your input in order to help. I kind of think of myself as more as a facilitator of the conversation, not an expert. I can help bring all the pieces together. I can help document, I can help formulate a plan. I can ask those coaching questions, but I don't have to have all the answers. I just need to maybe have that good organization to help come up with a plan, knowing that, okay, you know, set sort of that groundwork for, if this doesn't work, we'll come together and we'll come up with a plan. It doesn't mean that this is the be all end all and there's no options after that. I think that's what parents are sometimes fearful of, is that, well, if we can't make this successful, then my child can't use AAC. That's not the case. That's not the case with any assistive technology, really, we can apply this model to. We just have to keep trying, and we have to keep searching for those answers.
Everyone's saying thank you so much. And really the information you presented was incredible.
And right there. So there's our contact information. You have Lydia's information in the presentation, mine. Feel free to connect with us on social media. Join in those AT Twitter chats. I put in a link to the Wisconsin Assistive Technology Regional Network meetings. We have our first meeting next week. Kelly Fauner is going to be leading the meeting with a PST from Marathon County, Annie Sims, and we're going to hear from the PRC Sotillo rep, who's going to also be talking about like alternative pencils and writing. So that's going to be a great topic. And from that link, you can also find the topics for all of our meetings this year. We have some really great presenters that are coming in this year. So thank you, everyone.